It's time to do the mid-year freakout tag, which is just a selection of questions all talking about some of the best and worst books that I read this year so far. So let's freak out. It's the middle of the year. Let's panic and look at the TBR and think there's no way I'm going to read all that. But I'm going to try anyway because we try our best here. The first question is probably the hardest question, which is the best book of 2024 so far. So for me, this was a tie. It was a tie between Royal Assassin and Dungeon Crawler Carl book 6. And the name is escaping me. Butcher's Masquerade. No, is that 5? The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. That's right. Oh, that was such a good book. The problem I think I'm going to go with Dungeon Crawler Carl, just because it is so different, unique, it's so much fun, and I've not read another series that has just had me completely addicted. As you've probably seen over the last year as I've binged the series, listening to them back to back. I was reading other things as well, but mainly Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I need the next one yesterday, Matt, so if you are still writing Faction Wars, I'm very excited for it. Please release it soon, especially now that I've caught up. I'm miserable. But there is so much I loved about the 7th book in particular. I loved the floor mechanic, had this sort of card-like Yu-Gi-Oh! Meets Pokemon type thing where Carl could capture monsters within a card. I also loved all of the political overstory movement that we got in this book, especially with... I don't know if it's a spoiler to talk about the things with the AI. The things with the AI was really cool in particular. I enjoyed that. And the humor is always there. It's always hilarious. And I really like that we're getting more and more emotional moments with Carl and Donut. I do think even from book 3 onwards, you start to get more and more into their psyche and development as characters. I went in for the ha-has and I came out with it. Oh no. I will never shut up about Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'll shut up about it now. The second question, best sequel. And because I could do Dungeon Crawler Carl for that, I'm picking Royal Assassin for this. Now, I read Assassin's Apprentice last year, and I loved it. I did a full spoiler-filled video on both Assassin's Apprentice and Royal Assassin, and I had a blast with both. I am currently reading Assassin's Quest, and that's been a really good time. However, Hob... I love her writing. Her writing and her prose style is just so immersive. I love the care that she's taking to build the world, to build the characters, even the side characters. I did talk about this in my spoiler-filled video, where I feel like every single character has their own unique story. It's a very difficult thing to do when it's a single POV story. However, just the way that she comes in and meets some of the side characters and how we get bits of their story throughout Fitz's story, it's just so well done. I mean, the Mountain Princess, Kitrikan, probably butchering the name, she's such a cool character. Some of the reveals with Patience, Burek is always awesome. I also loved learning more about the Fool. The Fool's Tale makes sense. And Fitz. Fitz is my boy. I feel so bad for Fitz. Hob is so mean to him. Over and over. To the point where if things are going well for Fitz, you start feeling suspicious. You think, okay, this is not a good sign. Something's going to go very wrong very quickly. You can't have a moment of happiness. That's not allowed in Hob World. And the ending. Oh boy, the ending. I heard it was really traumatic, which it was. It was quite a emotionally impactful ending. However, just on a level of implication for the narrative and Fitz, and just the craziness, the uniqueness of it, it was such a blast to read. So I loved Royal Assassin. I should probably get through these quicker, or it's going to be a long video. New release that you want to read. Now, this is new releases that are already out. This is tough because there's quite a lot of books that have come out this year that sound amazing. That's the downside to doing the monthly new release videos, is that I do research and try and find all the new releases. I do sometimes miss one, or especially self-published, where it's harder to find them on lists and Goodreads and just online. But there are so many. There are so many great books coming out every month. And there are so many ones I want to read, and it's not good. But the ones that really caught my eye that I've not read yet, one was Kivithri. Just this idea of this underdog story and some of the comparison titles just sounded really good. I loved reading the synopsis. I think the cover is stunning. Kivithri will remind you of fantasy heroes like Arya Stark, Gideon the Ninth, and Kaladin Stormbliss. Anything compared to Kaladin, I'm in. And it just sounded like a really good new epic fantasy series to check out. So definitely want to check that out before the end of the year. Next up is a series that I have mentioned quite a few times on this channel because I'm super excited to get to it. Is the God Eater Saga by Rob J. Hayes. A grand epic story that has 3 books out already spanning across different ages. A magic system where you eat angel flesh. And is by Rob J. Hayes, who did the War Eternal series, which I loved. And I do need to check out his other series, Never Die and this Mortal Technique series. But I loved War Eternal, so I have high hopes for this new God Eater Saga. The only reason I haven't picked it up yet is because it's like over 700 pages. And fitting that in is quite difficult when you're a slow reader. However, I do plan on reading it quite soon because, oh man, it just sounds incredible. And lastly, it's kind of a sin that I've not picked this up yet. Well, it's not, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Empire of the Damned. Now, I loved Empire of the Vampire. Empire of the Vampire was such a fun book. It made me think, wow, vampires are actually really cool. Which is not something I would ever thought that I would be interested in. But just the world building, I love his prose style. Just the witty banter and some of the humor in Empire of the Vampire, and just the epic scope of the story and the world. I mean, it's a world overrun by zombie-like vampires. It just sounds cool. So it's a sin that I've not read Empire of the Damned yet, but I'm probably going to keep it for October, or at least the autumn season. I did grab a copy, because I do love the cover, and it comes with pretty sprayed edges, but I'm really looking forward to checking this one out. And the reviews have been so positive, so I'm glad to hear that this is really good. Plus, I know when I finish it, I'm just going to want the next one, so the longer I put that off, probably the better, because then it's closer to book 3. Anticipated releases for the rest of 2024. Now, there's still quite a few books that are coming out this year that I really want to check out. First of all, we have Into the Rift by Clay Harmon, the sequel to Flames of Mira, and if you're new here, I've mentioned this a couple times in a couple different videos. I'm a big fan of Flames of Mira. Chemical magic system, really interesting character dynamics between characters, because the main character is flesh-bound to this magnate, and it's kind of got this Stockholm Syndrome type situation where he starts befriending some of the people in the family that he's technically a slave to, and we get more about his past. The main character, Ig, it's a ton of fun. It's a really cool world as well. They live in these tunnel systems on this uninhabitably cold planet, clinging close to lava for warmth. Plot was great. The secondary point of view character as well, I really enjoyed following, and where it left off has me really excited for Into the Rift. So I will definitely be checking that out when it drops in July. Another one is the third Bloodsworn book. So the third book in the Shadow of the Gods, Hunger of the Gods, and now Fury of the Gods. I'll put them there so I can edit the cover there. It's probably still going to chop the top off, isn't it? A Viking Norse-inspired fantasy world by John Gwynne. His writing is so evocative, just the way that he can write action sequences, and just his word choice is so brutal. You can really hear the crunch of skulls and the spattering of the organs and things with the fight scenes. He really has a way with words. Not like, oh, he has pretty flowers, more just spraying organs and such, but it's really cool, and the story's great, and the characters are great, and the world is super interesting. It does take influence from Norse mythology, however it's very much its own thing. And after the ending of Hunger of Gods, if you've read it, you know why we need book 3, because that was an ending. That was an ending. So I'm super excited to get book 3. And of course, don't worry, I certainly won't be missing it. Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, the 5th Stormlight book. Stormlight is probably my favorite series of all time. Mistborn was a series that kind of got me into adult fantasy, and I do think a lot of your favorite series are tied to the books that bring you into the genre. But Stormlight just took it up a notch from Mistborn. His just interconnectivity between books and his world, and the character work, and the world building, and the reveals, and just the epic scale of Stormlight is such a blast to read. And with the 4 books out and the fact that they are all over 1,000 pages, there's a lot that happens and a lot of world building and character development done in this series. And it is going to be a 10-book series with 2 main arcs. So the 5th book will end the first arc of Stormlight Archive. So it's going to be a big book. There's going to be a lot of stuff that happens in this book, a lot of endings. I think there's probably going to be some main character deaths. I think we're going to get a lot of reveals for the main plot of Stormlight Archive and the Cosmere as a whole. I can't wait. I can't wait. Biggest disappointment of 2024 so far. Now, this is a tough one because I've been really lucky with books this year. I've read a lot of great books. And I'm really sad to say this because I really am excited for it. And I've not finished it. It was technically a DNF or a pause. I will probably go back to it. But that is Kraken Rider Z. I listened to perhaps about 21 chapters. I would say probably more than a quarter. And there just wasn't anything that really drew me into the story. I felt like the main character was pretty flat. There was so much I love about it too, because the bond between the Kraken and the main character is really cool. The world building. And I do think where I stopped is where it's starting to go towards the rest of the story. I don't want to say what he's doing, but he's going into the story. You could probably guess after just the start of the book. But that's part of the problem. It was just really predictable and just very simple. It read very young, and I just wanted more. I wanted more depth to it, and I was a little disappointed with that. I will probably go back to it just when I'm looking for a lighter read and finish it. So I'm hoping that the last 3 quarters do pick up, because it's difficult to say something disappointing off the first 25%. However, I put it down because it just wasn't what I was in the mood for currently. So it was a bit of a disappointment because I was really excited to read it. If you've read it, let me know. Does it get better? Does it pick up a bit? Because it does feel like a pretty slow start. The biggest surprise. Now this one, okay. I knew I was going to like this book. It just sounded cool. But I did not realize how much I was going to love this book. And that is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is a murder mystery fantasy, and it has so much charm and uniqueness. I just had an absolute blast with this. It blew me away with how much I enjoyed it. Just the world building, some of the aspects with this world. They live in this sort of walled city that are keeping out these huge leviathans that charge against the wall every wet season. We have this sort of bio-mutagenic magic system where individuals can go under surgery and sort of become different classes of people almost. There are engravers who have incredible memory, and they have these jars of different smells, and then if they smell it, they can attach and recall everything around them to this smell. So when they smell it later, they will remember everything. You have, oh man, I can't remember the class names, but there's one that's pretty much just you're super jacked, and they actually have to put in new bones into your body to hold up all the muscle. However, it does shorten your lifespan significantly, so it's quite a difficult life for those who have that role in life. It allows people to have all these different abilities and kind of like a class system, a bit like a lit RPG type thing where they have different identities and come under this certain class, and it all fits into the magic system really well. So of course we followed the main character, who is an engraver, and he works with this very quirky detective that is a lot like Sherlock Holmes. Her name is Anna, and she wears her Sherlock Holmes influence on her sleeve, but she's a ton of fun. She's really bizarre, and she insults everybody and talks their ears off, and she's just, I always enjoyed when it was her chapter, when we were with her. And then I went on a murder mystery spree because I loved it that much. I was picking up the Silver Blood Promise afterwards anyway, but it kind of had murder mystery elements to it, and I was like, this is meant. So I did have a blast with that, and I am now currently reading Murder at Spindle Manor, which is a fantasy murder mystery as well. It won the SPFBO competition, and we're reading it as part of the book club Discord this month, and I'm having an absolute blast with this too. So I think I have a thing for murder mysteries now, and it's the Tainted Cup's fault. Favorite new author. Now, we didn't read that many new authors this year, or at least not more than one book from a new author. So I'm probably going to have to go with Robert Jackson Bennett. Just the writing style, loved it. The characters, loved it. The plot, loved it. The world building, loved it. So you know I'm going to go pick up Foundry Side and the City of Stairs series afterwards, because I did have so much of a blast with the Tainted Cup. And I need book 2 in the Tainted Cup world now. Fictional crush. Now, I don't really get crushes for fictional characters. Can I just go with Anna from the Tainted Cup? Can we just talk about the Tainted Cup again? Let's go with Anna from the Tainted Cup. She is such a cool character. She's really interesting, such a bizarre, quirky person. And I did love a lot of the humor with her banter with some of the other characters. Yeah, she's a ton of fun to read from, so I'll pick her. Book that made you cry. Now, I don't really cry in books, but Royal Assassins brought me close a couple times. There's a lot of emotional moments in this book, and a lot of people fixate on the ending being very emotional, and it was. However, I will say a lot of the middle sections as well, a lot of the different things that he goes through. There was one section where he finds, I think it was this book, not the first one. I'm pretty sure it was Royal Assassin. He comes across a young girl who isn't a named character. We don't know who she is, and she ends up dying to these feral humans, we'll call them. And the way that Hobb wrote that section, it was an unnamed character. We met them and they died on the same page. I shouldn't care, but the way that she wrote it and Fitz's response, and just him trying to save her, it was so visceral, the emotion in that scene for this unknown character, that I was blown away by how much emotion that drew out for some unknown person. Book that made you happy. Dungeon Crawler Carl. Nothing makes me happier than just listening to some Dungeon Crawler Carl. The audiobook, just sticking on, catching up with Carl and Donut and whatever antics they're up to, is always a blast, always makes me happy, and it's such a comfort read for something that's quite dark and messed up, especially as the series goes on. It probably shouldn't be comforting, but it is. It's just such a fun, I think it's because it balances this sort of very dark undertone story of this alien TV show. Is brutal. It's completely brutal. It has humans that are being paraded around on this TV show, and they're dying in the most horrific ways. And every night, Carl can look at the counter for how many people have died that day. And just seeing the human population dwindle every day is going to wear you down. Especially for the entertainment of these unknown aliens. It's super dark, but the way that it is balanced with this really funny, absurd front, or almost like a skin in a video game, because it's set up to be entertaining for these aliens, it just fits these two tones so well together that even though it's dark and horrific and you can have these really emotional moments, you can also laugh on like the page before and it still doesn't feel tonally jarring. It just is the perfect mesh of two very different tones. And that's my excuse for finding something that probably shouldn't make me happy and is really messed up, but it does. I love Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's great. Most beautiful book you've bought. Now this is tough. I got a lot of really nice books this year. However, I'm probably going to have to go with the Threadlight Trilogy Omnibus that I got from Zach Argyle's Kickstarter. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. I love a leather-bound book. I do think that Zach did an incredible job. Well, Zach and his team did an incredible job. Stunning interior art. Just the very classic fantasy-looking leather-bound. Just looks incredible. Really nice slipcase as well with the same sort of sword design on it. I've got to go with that for my favorite. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to go with Silence is Silver, my novella that's coming out today of this book. This is releasing today. You can get it completely for free, link in the description. However, when you've written something in that first time you get to see the art, it is a very special moment. So I kind of have to go with my own book just because it means so much to me to see the art. And it is still really pretty. The hardcover does come with the dust jacket. And when you take the dust jacket off, you get the art on the naked hardback. So I absolutely love how that came out. It is a prequel novella to my Shadowbinders trilogy. The first book, Harbinger of Justice, is out. And yeah, like I said, you can download this completely for free in the description below. So if you want to check that out, super short, only 50 pages, easy to fit in the TBR. Okay, I'll stop promoting my own stuff now. Favorite adaptation. So I've not watched much TV this year, and especially not adaptations. There's not been as many this year. The obvious one is Dune Part 2. I did watch that at the start of the year, and it was incredible. I think they did a really good job of adapting the first book, and the sound design and the soundtrack is absolutely terrific. The visuals are fantastic. The acting is great. I do think that their take on Paul is a wee bit different from the book, but I think it's a really interesting take. I still think they were very faithful to the original text, but they did kind of take things a wee bit in their own direction, but it still felt very like Dune. It just was still very much Dune at its core. So I do think they did a good job of adapting it, but it's just a good film as well. I also watched the first episode of the Fallout show. I really enjoyed it. I do need to continue on with that because I did have such a good time with that first episode. I've not played the games yet, but that pilot episode was great. I do really need to get on with that. Must reads before the end of the year. So many. Right. The main big ones I really need to get to is, first of all, Cosmere catch-up. With Stormlight 5 coming out at the end of the year, I do want to fill in my gaps with the Cosmere so I'm completely up to date and that I don't miss any big things in Stormlight 5. And that includes the Bands of Mourning and the Lost Metal. So the end of Era 2. I've read the first two books, but I do need to read these still. There's also a handful of Cosmere novellas that I've not read yet that I'd really like to read before Stormlight 5. And also Elantris. I don't own a copy of Elantris yet, but I do also want to read Elantris before Stormlight 5 because there's already been references in the Cosmere to Elantris. Then I think I'm up to date with the Cosmere. Not White Sand. I've not read White Sand, but I'm going to wait for the prose version. After that, sort of my main focus this year was to read some of the greats that I've not got to, or at least some of the modern day greats, like Robin Hobb. I also want to listen to, in particular, Joe Abercrombie. So I've not read it yet. I'm a monster. I know, I'm sorry. But I do really want to listen to the audiobook for The First Law. The First Law trilogy in particular. If I read the First Law trilogy, I'll be happy that I've made a dent into Abercrombie's work. And I am planning on doing this very, very soon, which I will tell you why and kind of my plans for that in my TBR video, which is coming up around the corner. But I'm finally going to make the plunge and read some Joe Abercrombie. I know I'm going to love it. It sounds great. Character-driven, grim, dark, with humor. It ticks all the boxes for me. The fact that I've not read it yet is a sin because I know I'm going to love it, but I wanted to sort of finish off some other series before I got to it. But I'm really looking forward to checking out First Law. But the TBR is never ending. I'm never going to run out of books that I want to read. That will never be an issue, ever. That'll do it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what is the best book you have read in 2024 so far. And like I said, I am launching my novella today. This is release day for Silence is Silver, the prequel novella that you don't have to have read the trilogy for, and you can download the ebook completely for free in the description below. And I do plan on going live later today and doing sort of like a celebration stream for the book launch and also 10k on the channel, which I know I hit a wee while ago, but I was busy preparing this. This is the real reason why we've not done a celebration stream. So I'm bunching them together, we're going live, and we're just going to hang out, and you can ask questions about writing or about books, just anything. It'll be a super fun, just chilled hangout. So thank you very much for watching. Outro. You made tea? Oh, thanks. I was going to say that. I didn't think it was my night to make tea.
It's not mine.
Yeah.